basically everything else, so all other nerves. These will include cranial nerves, which you're going to get to know by name. They come off the brain. So they are on the brain, basically. They come out of the brain and go into the brain. Spinal nerves. They're on either side of the spinal cord. We're not going to get to know these by name. They're just named by numbers. You could sit there and count them if you wanted to. We're not going to do that, but they come off of the spinal cord. We'll see them next week. And then lastly, okay, that is the last one. Okay, so they're just for when, not on our list, but for when you get to lecture, just so you don't get confused. I won't have this on the test, but just plain old peripheral nerves are nerves throughout the body. So if I ask what are parts of the peripheral nervous system in the PNS, you can include that in your answer. That's correct, even though it's not on your list. But I won't ask about this specifically because it's not on your list. But these two are also part of the peripheral nervous system. Now the peripheral nervous system can be divided into two categories, the afferent division and the efferent division. The afferent has to do with incoming sensory information. So that's stuff that's coming from the body going up to your brain. The efferent division is outgoing motor information. These are movement commands coming from the brain going down to the rest of the body. This movement could be conscious, so you think I'm going to move my arm, and then you do move your arm. If it is conscious like that, we call that somatic. So that's a division of the efferent division. So it's skeletal muscle that can be moved consciously. Of course, sometimes your skeletal muscles move unconsciously, like when you're standing up. There's reflexes that are keeping you standing up. You're not consciously sitting there thinking of all the muscles that you're using to keep yourself upright. Any sort of activity you do is the same idea. Any reflex, if you touch something that hurts and you move yourself away from it, that's not something you consciously did, it's a reflex. So you can move these unconsciously. It's still part of the somatic nervous system because it's dealing with skeletal muscle, same motor neurons. Then you also have the autonomic. This is all unconscious stuff. You can never do this consciously. This is cardiac muscle, smooth muscle, and glands. So your heart beating, the muscle around your digestive tract or your blood vessels. Glands would be, any of the glands in your skin, like your sebaceous glands, your sweat glands, or endocrine glands, which make hormones. Those are all controlled by the autonomic system. Okay. So all of these things on here could be asked as a question. There's no picture for them. For neuron structure, there is a model. The model's a little strange though, so I'm going to draw a picture first of the way it really looks, and then it'll be easier to interpret the model once you see the way a neuron really looks. I'm just going to draw kind of a stick figure of it. So you've got kind of a rounded part with little points coming off of it. So sort of triangular narrowing of that. Long extension, branches out at the end, really hundreds of branches, and then little knobs at the end of those. So what we have here is the soma, or cell body. This long extension is the axon. And then kind of triangular place between the axon and the soma is the axon hillock. These little things sticking out, these are called dendrites. Dendro or dendritic, this is referring to branches of a tree, so they look sort of like branches of a tree. Not on the list, but just because you're going to get here in lecture relatively quickly, there's also going to be even smaller extensions sticking off of here. These are called dendritic spines. I'll just put them on here, so you're ready for that. But it's not on the model. That's just FYI. Skip the neurolemma for a second. We'll get back to it. On the model, you're going to see myelin. What myelin is basically the cells that wrap around the axon, and they electrically insulate the axon. So on the model, they're kind of beige, and they really do look kind of beige or white in real life, and it has like these layers of the cell wrapped around like that. So this will be, this whole green thing is the myelin. And it's made out of specific cells, which you'll deal with in lecture. I won't give it here. So for here, we'll just call that green right there. But the spaces between where you have the green cells, so right here, that's called a node of Ranvier. And you would have more than one node of Ranvier because you'd have more than two of these cells myelinating your axon. But on the model, there's just these two, so three, sorry. Okay, now back to the neurolemma. On the model, there will be a gray, at the very end of this myelin, there's going to be like a little gray, kind of webby looking piece over here that covers the myelin, and this is called the neurolemma. So that will be gray. And then these little knobs at the end are the synaptic knobs. Okay, now what's weird about the model is they have just kind of chopped it. So they chopped the axon off. So that you just see kind of part of it. So they chopped it off right about here, and then they chop it here again. So you don't see the synaptic knobs at the end. What they show you are the synaptic knobs from another neuron coming onto the one on the model, because the way it'll typically be arranged, or just a kind of common way, is that here will be another cell body, axon, and so these synaptic knobs are kind of sitting right on the dendrites of the next neuron in line, and they're really, really close, a very, very small distance away. So the way that the model has shown is just showing these synaptic knobs sitting right on the dendrites. And so it gets a little bit confusing because of that. So if we look at it, you can tell that's the cell body. That's clear. That's the big rounded spot. And you can see these white pieces that are sticking out of it. These are the dendrites. So they're parts of the cell body that are extending out. But there's the synaptic knobs. They're these orange rubber pieces they're from another neuron that's communicating here to this one. So they're not part of this one, but they're on a neuron that comes before it. This would be the axon hillock right here. It would narrow to go down to the axon. Then they chop off the axon and just put it over here. So you can see the axon over here. This kind of beige color, that would be the myelin. You can see there's one cell here, there's another cell here. So the space between, that would be the node of Ranvier. And then down here at the end, covering the myelin, there's another node of Ranvier right there, covering the myelin. This would be the neurolemma. So you've got the neurolemma, the myelin is all this beige stuff. The nodes of Ranvier are the spaces between the myelin. You've got the axon, also here, the axon hillock, the body, the dendrites, and the synaptic knobs are these orange rubber pieces. Anybody have any questions about this model? Okay, for the nerve structure, this will be a figure in the book. So for the epineurium, perineurium, and endoneurium, there's no model, it's just a picture in the book. It could also be asked as a question, but before we get to that, I need to define the word fasciculi, which is the plural of the word fascicle. So a fascicle is a bundle or a group of basically long skinny things that come in strands. So here we're talking about a bundle of axons because we're talking about the nervous system. When you look at muscles, it could be a bundle of muscle cells. So it's anything that's long and stringy and bundled into a group like that. So one fascicle, two fasciculi. Now a nerve is just lots of axons organized or arranged into these bundles, so organized into fasciculi. And then each little segment of the nerve, or each section, is going to be wrapped in a particular membrane. So you have, and we're going to start from the innermost to the outermost. I think it makes more sense. So we're going to go backwards from endoneurium to perineurium to epineurium. So the endoneurium this is a membrane wrapped around each axon. And then you'll have a bunch of axons put together, each with their little endoneurium around them, and that makes a fascicle. And the whole fascicle will be wrapped in the perineurium. So that's the membrane around each fascicle. And then the outermost one is the epineurium. And that would be a membrane around a group of fasciculi. So endo is the innermost one. That's why it's called endo. Endo is the, means inside or deep. Peri, like a perimeter, it's around something here, it's around the fascicle. Epi is kind of an outer thing, it's something that's on the outside or above, so that's around a whole bunch of fasciculi. So there's a picture for that. Now sensory nerve, motor nerve, Those go back to the afferent division and the efferent division of the peripheral nervous system. So just to reiterate, the sensory nerve carries obviously sensory information, which is afferent. And a motor nerve carries motor information, which is efferent. And a mixed one carries both. Okay, now we're gonna start the brain, and actually we do need one more model for this. So I'll give you a second to get it. It's these blue sagittal sections. So these things, if you get a green one, that's fine.